Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Scher. That's Robert Harding. This is the Citizen Sports Weekly. We're recording this fine sports video on Friday, March 14th, 2014. It's Pi Day, 3.14. Get it? I know. It took me a second, too. Anyways, before we get started, it's March Madness time. College basketball conference tournaments are in full swing, and I'm just going to take a moment to tout my University at Albany Great Danes, which tomorrow morning, 11:30, ESPN2. You okay there?
Oh, yeah.
Are playing
live TV, folks.
SUNY Brethren Stony Brook at Stony Brook on wonderful Long Island. 11:30 game, ESPN2. I'm really excited. My Great Danes, my alma mater's back in their conference title game. They won it last year. Went to the NCAAs, got whooped, I think, by Duke. So, not like we're going to make a run at the Final Four like Syracuse, but I'm very proud of these guys, and hopefully they can pull off a W on the road and get back to the big dance. And speaking of Syracuse, they have a game later tonight against North Carolina State.
Excuse me.
Jeez, Robert, got to get you some Robitussin. Syracuse has a big game tonight, their first ACC conference tournament game, first ever in school history. They're playing NC State tonight at 7 o'clock, and mostly by the time you guys watch this game will be over, so I can't really do any predictions. Although they almost lost to NC State at the Dome last month. It was a very close game. SU needed a little help. There was a goaltend call at the end there that gave them the winning basket. That's when SU was living their charmed life where they couldn't lose, even if they tried. Things obviously have changed quite a bit. So, let's talk about Syracuse in regards to their the NCAA bracket here. When they were number one in the country, they were easily the number one seed in the entire tournament. They were going to have games in Buffalo and New York City, which basically would be home games for them. A lot has changed, obviously. So what happens if they lose tonight? That's it. They don't go anywhere in this tournament. They're done. I think they could drop to a 4 seed. Truly believe that.
Yeah, probably. I would say a 3 seed would probably be in the cards for them. Certainly, if you look at their full resume, I think you have to, not only look at if they were to lose tonight, not only look at that loss, but also, what transpired at the end of the regular season for them in conference, and say, this team isn't as good as they were early on in the season. They've had some offensive woes. The defense has been okay, but is this team worthy of a high seed, 1 or 2 seed? If that happens, no.
A 0 and done, and I really think they drop to a 4. And I think the NCAA Tournament Committee, you're supposed to judge a team by its entire season for at-large bids, but you can't help but notice this team has not played well the last month, and I think that will affect what happens to them. Now, if they win tonight and they play we're going to say Duke. We're going to predict Duke, and they lose to Duke, then I think they're definitely a 3 seed easily. I think if they beat Duke and get to the conference championship game, I think they move up to a 2 seed.
Yeah. I think if it goes their way, if they can win tonight against NC State, if they'll likely play Duke, if they can beat Duke in that game, I can see moving up to a 2. It would certainly strengthen their resume if they can get to that ACC tournament final. They did show us something in that season finale there with Grant back. Right. Which was good. That was a good sign. They were shooting the ball a little bit better. Didn't rely on the outside on the 3 so much, but got some good mid-range jumpers going and worked it inside. So if they can do that, if Trevor Cooney isn't shooting 15 times a game, I think they'll be fine. But I can see it transpiring just how you're outlining here.
Well, that's a great point, Robert, because you bring up Jeremy Grant, and you could make the argument that Syracuse is not the same team without this guy. That when he's playing, a completely different team, and it's no coincidence that all those losses, I believe, 3 out of the 4 losses came with Grant out. I think that when this guy's playing and he's healthy, that Syracuse is a different team, and that's the team that we saw when they were undefeated, number 1 in the country. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I will say this, we can talk about seeds and things and whether SU is a 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You're in the tournament. and you got to do something with it. You can be a number 1 seed, and most likely you're going to beat the 16 seed. It's never not happened. But a 2 seed can lose to a 15. That's happened a few times. And 3s definitely can lose to 14. So, and remember, when Syracuse won the national title in 2003, they were a 3 seed, okay?
That's right.
So, it's not exactly where you start, but it's, to use the cliche, it's where you finish. And I hope people don't get too hung up. They feel like, oh, SU got robbed. They got a 3 seed. They should have been a 2 seed. It doesn't really matter. You're going to have tough, after that first game, really, your second game is going to be tough, and the rest of them are going to be tough. So if this team is as good as Syracuse fans say they are, or as good as they looked the first, until the middle of February, then guess what? They'll win, they'll go to the Final Four, and maybe they win the national title. But if they're not that good, then guess what's going to happen? They're going to lose early, one and done possibly. So we'll see. Anything else you want to add about that, Robert?
No, I just think going into this is a big weekend for them, and if they can put in a good showing at the ACC tournament and get a decent seed, I think if they lose tonight and go in as a 4, I don't think that's preferable.
Right.
I think they want to get a little bit higher than that, but at the same time, as you said, it doesn't really matter. Get in there, play well, work out the kinks, go into the tournament and play well, and really from there it's who can win 6 games first.
Last thing I want to add real quickly is sometimes you do want to win the first game in your conference tournament, but on the other hand, do you want to play 3 games in 3 days and get tired, and then you don't have anything left for the NCAA tournament? Maybe it's good. Syracuse wins tonight, they lose tomorrow to Duke, and then they've got a few days to rest. Maybe they're playing on Thursday. They get an extra day of rest by not playing on Sunday. And what would you rather have, an ACC Conference Championship tournament banner hanging up in the rafters there at the Dome, or would you rather have that NCAA Final Four banner? I think you'd rather have the Final Four banner. So, all right. We're going to move to the NFL. We're not going to discuss all of free agency because there's been so many moves and $1 billion worth of new contracts, according to Peter King, that
It's about as much as we make here, huh?
Yeah, my head's spinning. I just can't keep track of all these signings. But Robert and I, if you know us, you know the videos. I'm a Dolphins fan, and he's a Bills fan. God knows we love our misery, don't we? Yeah. How many playoff wins in the last 15 years between our 2 teams? Maybe just a couple, if that.
Playoff wins?
Wins, yeah.
Well, I know that the Bills aren't in that group.
Yeah.
The last playoff win was when I was like 9 years old.
Yeah, I think the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game was 2001, so it's been a while. So obviously we've been very, active in following our teams. The Dolphins, I like what they've done because, number one, they kept 2 of their good free agents. Brent Grimes, cornerback, I think they're arguably their best defensive player last year. They got him back in the fold. And Randy Starks. Another guy who I think is important as a run stuffer. Then they signed Brandon Albert, a left tackle, which they desperately needed. They got him. And then they signed a defensive lineman to replace Paul Soliai, who left for the Falcons. His last name, I believe, is Edwards. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, and I apologize to Dolphin fans for not knowing his first name. But I know his last name is Edwards. I know he's a defensive tackle. He comes from the Texans. So I like what Dennis Hickey's doing so far in his first year as Dolphins general manager. He's filling some holes. You're not going to fill everything in free agency. That's what the draft's for, and I think you want to build through the draft. And I like what he's doing so far. I just positive signs. So we'll see what happens with the draft, obviously in May, which is way too long to wait for the draft. It should be next month, but I'm encouraged so far. I think he's doing the right things. And making the right moves, and we'll see what happens. But I'm happy so far as a Dolphins fan. Now, as for you as a Bills fan, not as much, but a couple good things though.
Yeah, they made a few signings. There's talk that they might be in the market for 1 or 2 more. This is for teams like the ones we root for, this is the most optimistic time of the year, at least in their current form. The Bills, they signed Corey Graham, a Buffalo native. He played with Baltimore last year. Could come in and start at corner for them. So that's a nice addition. They added a Chris Williams, who plays left guard. Will probably start there, depending on how that competition goes. And the last addition they made, the most recent one, I believe, was Keith Rivers, outside linebacker, played for the Giants last year. He comes in, could easily start as well. They're talking about moving Kiko Alonso to outside linebacker,
today,
and they're looking. That means that they're in the market for a middle linebacker, and there's talk that they're Brandon Spikes is in Orchard Park today. They could lock up a deal as soon as this evening. So I hope that happens. I think Spikes would bring a great presence in the middle for the Bills. A guy who Kiko Alonso is quick. He's versatile. Good against the pass. Okay against the run. Brandon Spikes is a different beast. He's good at clogging the middle, good against the run, okay against the pass, but you need a good run stuffer in the middle there. And hey, I like the additions, but like you said, you got to build through the draft and really, come early May, that's going to be the big question. What are you going to target? Dolphins too, I'm sure, have their needs and what they're going to address. And
more offensive line.
And for the Bills, it's the same thing. Offensive line. They need a big wide receiving target, whether that's a wide receiver, and I like Mike Evans out there, or if it's a tight end, whoever's available there. But there's a lot of hope this time of year.
And one thing I want to mention about the Bills, which I think was a very good thing, and I know Robert's got to be like shaking his head like Chris is going to say something good about the Bills. I like the fact that he re-signed Dan Carpenter.
Yeah,
I think that's smart. I mean, he had a career year last year. I still am disappointed the Dolphins let him go. I mean, the year before in 2012, he did miss some kicks that could have won some games. But if you judge this guy by the body of his work, I mean, he's one of the best kickers in the NFL. He had a little bit of an off year last year, and what do? You draft a kicker in the 5th round, and you let Carpenter go. It's just, again, I was not a fan of that move. And the Bills' credit, they signed him. And they had an injury, they had a young kicker. They signed him as an injury replacement, and they made him the permanent kicker. And the fact that he's back as a free, he was a free agent. The fact that he's back in Buffalo, I think it shows you volumes that the Bills are smart. They know if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a young kicker, okay, whatever. You let him go, but you've got a good kicker now, and that's what counts. So I give the Bills credit for that.
Yeah, that was, I left that out, focusing on the new guys, but that was a good move to re-sign him. Here's a guy that came right in and had a career year in terms of kicking, and had one of the best kicking seasons in Bills history. So that's nothing to that's certainly nothing to ignore. And the Bills didn't. They brought him back in, and one more signing I should mention is that the Bills did re-sign Scott Chandler, one of their big tight ends. So he's good. I think that they could use one more like him or even better than him. I wouldn't have minded if they let him go, but at the same time, keeping him in the fold, it's always good in today's NFL to have, a couple good tight ends. So we'll see what happens. But, between our two teams, it's good to see them active.
Yes.
A lot of teams tend to, some teams tend to sit back this time of year. They don't really sign anyone. They might pick up, one or two guys, but they don't make a splash. The Bills and Dolphins are players in the free agent market this year. That's a good thing to see.
I would have liked to have gotten Darrelle Revis, but you can't have everything. Or Darren Sproles, to be honest with you. But, there's a lot of time left in free agency. I mean, the big guys are gone, but there's still some solid players in there. And I think one thing that's understated, and this is what we were just touching on with Carpenter's, I think sometimes free agency is just as important to keep your guys that you already have that are free agents, not letting them go. And, that's why with the Dolphins, with Brent Grimes, I was so thrilled because, you didn't want to let this guy go. And you got a contract that's good for him and good for you, that doesn't saddle you long term. And you keep your best defensive player who shows that he's still got something left. You don't hurt your team. And I think that's great. So, well, anything else you want to add, Robert? Or?
Well, just quickly, to, kind of counter that, the Bills, Jarris Byrd signed with the Saints.
Yes, that was.
That's probably that's going to sting a little bit. I think. The Bills do have some depth at safety, so it's not.
He
big
wanted
concern,
out of there, though. I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
you were going to keep him.
It seems like what the Saints were paying him, in terms of guaranteed money, was probably better than what the Bills could offer. It seemed like, at least from what I hear anyway, that the Bills offered, a better deal up front. Of course, this is all speculation, but, he went where the money was. And, on top of that, he's going with the Saints.
He wants to play for a winning team.
And, the Saints are going to be in the playoff hunt.
Can't blame him for that.
As long as Breeze and Sean Payton are down there.
Right.
So, hey, all the best to him, but as I said after he signed, look, I want to root for players that are going to be here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel the same way
Absolutely.
about the Dolphins.
If you don't want to be here, get out.
And it was clear from last year when they tagged him, they gave him the franchise tag that, it wasn't,
Right.
there wasn't anything the Bills could offer him to keep him here. So,
Right.
hey,
Yep.
on
No.
to New Orleans he goes.
Well, that's it, folks. We appreciate you watching our video. Please tell your friends and pass the word along, and tweet our links and everything. And we appreciate you watching. So until next week, have a great week and enjoy the games.